Hello, and welcome to Soothing Pod's Sleep Stories. My name is Chris, and tonight I will be your guide as we embark on a journey that will begin on the snowiest mountain peak of Scandinavia, continue down through pine forests and into the evergreen valleys, and finally take us all the way to Asgard, the kingdom of the Norse gods. But we will not be embarking on this journey alone. We will be joining Skadi, the goddess of winter, as she heads to Asgard for a very important reason. Before we begin our sleepy, snowy journey, however, let us take a moment to relax and find comfort in the space that we are in, here and now. Close your eyes and find a comfortable position on your mattress. Right now, there are no obligations. There is no to-do list. Simply close your eyes and listen to the sound of my voice, allowing your body to relax and rest. In time, the sleep will come. But for now, just trust that by closing your eyes and breathing deeply, you are giving your body everything it needs at this moment. With your eyes closed, try to picture your room. Imagine where the furniture is around you. Imagine the colors of the walls, of the stand, of the curtains by the window. Picture the little objects and creature comforts that are resting beside you on your nightstand. Their size and color, and the texture of them. Now that you have that outline that you've drawn in your mind, turn that imaginary gaze toward the ceiling. Above you, you see a rather peculiar thing. Something that you wouldn't see on an ordinary day. Because gathering there on the ceiling above you are white, fluffy clouds. Clouds that are ethereal, bathed in a soft blue light that silhouettes them from behind and illuminates them as though they were crafted from the heavens themselves. These clouds gather and grow, spreading across the ceiling like blooming wildflowers popping up from the dewy soil. And as these clouds grow, notice something even more peculiar within them. In the glow, you can see that there is a white mist slowly encompassing the clouds. And as that white mist finishes embracing the fluffy white clouds, there is a shift in the air. A chill shivers its way through it. A chill that makes the warmth of your blankets even more comforting. And as soon as that chill causes the air to shudder, snow begins to fall from the clouds. This isn't just any snow. It is the most beautiful snow you've ever seen, falling down slowly, ever so slowly, in your very own bedroom. The flakes are large, so large that some of them seem to bumble clumsily through the air in slow motion, like a fuzzy bumblebee taking its time drifting through the warm breeze on a summer day. They are on no schedule. They have no urgency to reach the floor of your bedroom, nor the tip of your nose or your fingertips. Instead, they take their time, drifting, cascading, floating down further and further, swinging and swaying from side to side whenever the universe compels them to. To your side, you see the objects on your nightstand as they are gently blanketed in a layer of the soft, cottony snow. It is an opportunity for them, too, to rest, to keep themselves private from everyone else's eyes, and to simply be in their own little world. You, too, feel as the snow gathers on the blankets on top of you. It coats the blanket just enough to be a thin layer before it begins to melt, and then starts the process all over again. You watch the flakes as they collect on the blanket, and this close up, in that beautiful glowing light, you see how truly unique they are. You see the ridges and valleys of every microscopic flake before you. You see the stories that are encased in each and every one, and why their journeys were so different as they came down. Why they took their own path on the breeze, but also why they all took their time. They are in no rush, for they will end up exactly where they are meant to be. Tonight, we are going to be like the snowflakes together. And to get into that mindset, imagine yourself not in your bed, but up in those breathtaking white clouds just over your head. Nestled inside them, you are not cold. You are warm with thoughts of the journey ahead of you. The journey of relaxation, of no stress or expectations, as you trust the wind and your own ridges and valleys to guide you. And slowly, you find yourself slipping out of the cloud and drifting down, down, down through the air. You sway lightly to the side, slowing down even more to look at the scene below you. And that scene is vastly different than it was before. You are not looking down at your bed in your bedroom. You are looking down at something you've never seen before. Because you are floating down to the highest ancient mountain peak in Scandinavia. Floating down to Trimheim, the grand hall where the snow never melts. Trimheim is within the kingdom of the giants, a beautiful, sprawling landscape full of ancient trees that reach the sky, snowy peaks, and rivers and valleys that are peppered all the way to the horizon. And it was within Trimheim, Thjazi and his daughter Skadi lived. The two lived a happy life of solitude within their mountain home. Skadi had always lived there, and she was truly meant to be in a place of such beauty and wonder. Skadi was certainly the goddess of winter. From a young age, she took to the snowy mountains like they had been crafted from the earth just for her. As a toddler, she would waddle out of the house and into the snow. She would plop down and roll around in the piles, grabbing fistfuls of the fluffy white snow and giggling with glee at the feeling it left on her tiny little fingertips. She would frolic along the mountain tops, swinging her arms and singing to the heavens as those slow, heavy flakes made their way down to dust her in a thin layer of sparkling ice and snow. They would coat her dark black eyelashes, painting them into icicles next to her darling blue eyes. They would stick to her hair and decorate it like hundreds of small flowers, all glistening in what little sunlight could leak in through the clouds. Skadi never grew cold in this beautiful snow. It didn't matter how much the wind brushed against her skin, or how dark the nights became. When she was out in the wilderness where she belonged, she felt the warmth of her home inside of her. It was a gift, she thought, though her father didn't quite share that sentiment. Many nights, Skadi's father would journey out into the wilderness to find his daughter. At first, he would do so with a panicked, worried look painted on his face. She was a young child after all, and the wilderness is known to be unforgiving. But to Skadi, the wilderness was just beautiful. It was her playground. So, while her father wandered around for hours looking for her, she would be sliding across icy ponds, tracing on the surface with long, silvery strokes as she made her way to a distant pine forest or a peak that she had yet to explore. While her father peeked into logs and searched up in tall pine trees, Skadi would be sliding down hills with a piece of bark she had scavenged, drifting down the slopes with ease and kicking up beautiful gusts of white snow in her wake. And when her father would finally find her, it would go the same nearly every time. Little Skadi would giggle and pop out from behind her hands, her cheeks red from the kiss of the winter air. Tiazi would shake his head at his daughter and click his tongue in disapproval. And yet, there would always be a smile on his face. He would pick her up gently, plop her on his shoulders, and start the long journey back to their home. When they would arrive home, Skadi would sit in front of the crackling fire. She would tell her father all about the journey she had been on that day in particular, about the birds she saw, about the animals she saw scurrying through the snow, leaving precious little footprints in their wake, about the berries she managed to find, about the way her feet sounded as she walked across the crackling snow. And her father would listen and nod and wonder how he ended up with such a cute little troublemaker on his hands. And as time passed, that question never truly got answered. And, truthfully, Tiazi was not a man that should have been wondering about such things. After all, he was quite a troublemaker himself. He was known by the other gods as a bit of a playful spirit, a man who enjoyed eating and drinking, a man who was much like his daughter. Unfortunately, that behavior got Tiazi in quite some trouble. One day, Tiazi turned into the form of an eagle and set out across the land to explore, much like his daughter did. But on this day, he saw something rather intriguing. He came upon Odin, Loki, and Hornir, who had gone into the mountains on a long journey together, intending to only stop when they needed to eat. They stumbled upon a herd of oxen and hunted one to have for dinner. But as they tried to cook the ox in an earth oven, they discovered that for some reason the ox would not cook. Frustrated by this, they argued with one another about how to get the oven to cook their dinner. Just then, they heard a voice chime from the oak tree above them. "I am afraid that is my fault." In his eagle form, Tiazi looked down at the gods with a lightness in his eyes. He promised the gods he would allow them to cook, but only if they allowed him to have some of the ox. The hungry gods agreed, but when Tiazi came down to eat from the ox, he did not do so very conservatively. He ate as much as his stomach could carry, not pausing at all. Loki, a god not known for his patience, grabbed his long staff and tried to strike Tiazi with it. But, to Loki's surprise, the weapon stuck steadfast to Tiazi's feathers. And as Tiazi took flight, he dragged poor Loki with him. Loki called up Tiazi in desperation, begging for him to let him down. Tiazi, knowing he had the upper hand, told Loki that he would let him go on one condition. He wanted Idun, the beautiful goddess of youth. Loki agreed quickly, and the deal was sealed. Tiazi put the god down and flew back home to prepare for the arrival of Idun. But the arrival of his wife would prove to be life-changing for Tiazi, and not in the way he was expecting. Being the goddess of youth, Idun was the reason the gods stayed young. Her apples allowed for immortality, and she was extremely important to the gods. Ever the trickster, Loki convinced Idun to leave Asgard by telling her he had found apples similar to hers in the nearby forest. confused by the possibility of such a thing, Idun snuck out of Asgard with Loki, only to be grabbed by Thjazi in his eagle form moments later. Thjazi was overjoyed. He had not only immortality, but one of the most beautiful women in all the land. Unfortunately, it would be short-lived for Thjazi. Very suddenly, the gods began to grey and age. After questioning Loki, they discovered that Idun had been kidnapped by Thjazi. And so, they went to the peak of the highest mountain to rescue her from Thjazi and bring her back to Asgard. In the process, Thjazi was killed. The gods fled back to Asgard with their beloved Idun, hoping that was the end of their story. But it was far, far from the end. Because Skadi was not a little girl anymore. Skadi had truly become the goddess of winter now, though many referred to her as the goddess of snowshoes. She spent most of her days skiing through the vast wilderness, exploring new places from sunrise to sunset. Still, she felt the most at home out in the woods, laying in the snow, breathing in the fresh air that smelled of pine needles and moss and lichen. And when Skadi discovered that her father had been killed by the gods, Skadi was not the least bit afraid of them, nor of what she had to do. She grabbed a helmet, a coat of mail, and all of the weapons she possessed, and began the long journey to Asgard to make the gods atone for the death of her father. The first night that Skadi set out, she had a sadness in her that she had never felt before. The loss had hit her deep, but there was comfort all around her. As she skied down the winding slopes she had journeyed over hundreds of times, but there was a new feel to them. And they were healing in an entirely unique way. Every bit of the landscape seemed to pop out to her, as if it was making itself known, as if it wanted to wrap its arms around her and bring her in an embrace. The air smelled of brisk snow that was on the distant horizon, mixed beautifully with the scent of the fir trees and the pines and the bark of the old stark white birch trees. Trees that had been standing here since she was a small child to welcome her home wherever she went. She turned her gaze up to the sky, where dozens of birds made their way to nests scattered throughout the mountains. She loved watching the birds dip and dive as they played games up in the air, and even more, she loved when they would all collectively stop for a moment, when she could see the delight in their eyes as the birds relaxed and let go of maneuvering through the wind, instead allowing the breeze to carry them wherever it pleased. She swore their wings sparkled against the sun differently whenever that happened, as if they had found true freedom, as if they had found their real home. And down below, she saw snapshot glimpses of the life of the creatures in the forest. Arctic foxes that pranced through the forest with the grace of goddesses themselves. She loved watching as their fluffy tails swung side to side when they ran, filling every space they entered with such beauty and wonder. And when there were the reindeer, the sweet, beautiful reindeer, they had a gentle nature to them. Whenever she sailed by on her skis, they would raise their heads to meet her gaze and watch her go. She felt somehow protected by them. Skadi skied like that all day, taking in the beauty of the surrounding nature to soothe her soul and mend her heart. She knew she would never be alone out here, that she could always come outside for comfort. But soon, the sun was slipping down over the horizon. The sky was painted a mosaic of cornflower and goldenrod and rose and wisteria as the sun set further and further. Skadi decided that reaching Asgard could wait until tomorrow. It felt right to stop right here, to stop right now. She took off her skis in a beautiful little grove that she had never explored before. The grove was made entirely of tall birch trees, but a recent snow and ice storm had created art with these beautiful trees. Nature had sculpted them into something entirely different and new. The trees were bent over in giant arches that stretched towards the ground. And these arches, these wonderful, beautiful arches, were encased in ice that radiated the colors of the setting sun. It was truly like an art installation. It said something to Skadi, and whenever the wind blew, it really said something to her. The trees would sway as much as they were able to, and as they did, the ice molded around the branches would crackle and pop and shift and sing. It was a symphony all around her. Each tree sang its own notes at its own pace, and with each breeze, Skadi felt less and less alone. One of Skadi's favorite things about winter is how quiet it is, and how loud it is at the same time. Sounds you would never hear during summer are the symphony of winter. The sound of a stray leaf being blown across the ice can fill an entire grove with music. The sound of trees cracking in the breeze, the sound of water bubbling beneath the ice of a distant brook, that you didn't even know existed. It was as if the rest of the world was put on mute, and nature was allowed to play its songs to the universe in a way it wasn't able to in the other seasons. And that night, as Skadi sat by the crackling fire she created, nature was certainly singing to the universe. Overhead, a great grey owl called into the night air. The sound was both haunting and beautiful, echoing to the mountains in the far distance and tickling the ears of every creature it passed along the way. Skadi looked up at the great grey owl in all of its beauty. It was a truly beautiful creature. Its feathers were marbled with grey and brown and stark white, all the colours it needed to blend in with the landscape of the mountains this time of year. Its feathers wrapped around it, keeping it warm, even though Skadi could see the breath of every call the owl made rise into the air like steam off a cup of a hot Earl Grey tea. Skadi watched the owl sing its song for quite some time. Behind it was a clear, starry night. The full moon cast its silvery light across the snow in the most breathtaking way. The world was illuminated, washing everything with a sense of peace. Skadi found herself gradually falling asleep to the sound of the great grey owl and the bubbling brook and the crackling, shifting, singing birch trees all around her. And when the sun rays kissed her face in the morning, she felt like she had been renewed. She continued the journey to Asgard, though she didn't have long to go now. She had reached the valley where Asgard could be found, and because of that, she was forced to abandon her skis and leave them for the journey back, whenever that may be. Walking across the grass was an entirely different feeling. Here, it was late summer, and that meant the breeze was lush with the aroma of ripe apples and fields of clover and daisies. She relished the feeling of the soft grass beneath her feet, of the sun that seemed to kiss her skin a little more gently here. And yet, she was still looking forward to returning home, still looking forward to being where the owls sang to the snow and the animals left imprints behind. When she reached Asgard, the gods were expecting her. Asgard was a beautiful, breathtaking place. A place of wealth and comfort, mixed with the ethereal beauty of nature. Skadi didn't find it a particularly fitting place for the gods on that day. But those feelings would gradually shift. She barged into the room where the gods were, unafraid of approaching them. She was a woman of bravery, a woman who knew where she belonged in the world. She told the gods that she demanded compensation for the loss of her father. It took some time to reach an agreement, But, in truth, the other gods feared the fierceness of Skadi. She was renowned with a bow and arrow, with a weapon of any kind, and her upbringing in the wilderness had made her hardier than anyone else in the kingdom. Skadi decided that she would like two things from the gods. First, she would like a husband to bring back to her kingdom with her. And secondly, she would like the gods to make her laugh. It was the least they could do after the pain they caused her. Eagerly, the gods agreed that she may choose a husband from among themselves, but on one condition. Skadi must pick her husband only by looking at their feet. This posed a problem for Skadi. She had come to Asgard with that proposal, hoping that she could pick Baldur, who many referred to as Baldur the Beautiful. She closed her eyes as the gods lined up in front of her. She looked over their feet carefully, trying to pick the most attractive pair. When she found the nicest ones, she smiled to herself and picked them, declaring that there can be little that is ugly about Baldur. To Skadi's surprise, Baldur was not the owner of the feet. Instead, the owner of the feet was Njordr, a god associated with the seas and the wind. Regardless, Skadi stuck to her agreement, thankful that at the very least, her home wouldn't be empty. And then came the second part of the deal. Feeling guilty because of the part he played in the tragic death of Skadi's father, Loki decided to take it upon himself to make Skadi laugh. He tied one end of a string to a nanny goat's beard and the other end to his privates. The goat and Loki pulled one another back and forth, both squealing loudly. With another pull from the goat, Loki was brought to the ground. Skadi doubled over, laughing, a sound of such joy that it even brought smiles to the old gods' faces. Her requests had been met, but Odin was not yet finished. He felt terrible about the death of Skadi's father, and truly wanted Skadi on his side. And so, he took the eyes of her father and cast them into the sky. There, the eyes of her beloved father became two bright, beautiful stars. Skadi thanked Odin for this beautiful gift and began the journey back up the mountain with her new husband. They hardly spoke along the way, but they didn't need to. They passed by the grove of birch trees that had been home to Skadi the previous night. They saw the great grey owl curled up in a notch in a tree, getting some rest as the day waned on. They saw the reindeer, who raised their heads in acknowledgement as Skadi and her husband passed by. They skied beneath the birds, flying high overhead, sailing through the pale blue sky with a type of freedom few ever get to experience. They journeyed back up the mountain, soaking up every piece of beautiful scenery along the way, and by the time they reached home, the sun had set down over the horizon, and in its place, the stars began to peek out of the inky black sky. Skadi looked up at the sky, and she had seen this beautiful sky countless times on her journeys out into the woods. But tonight, it was different, because high above her, there were two beautifully bright stars. Two stars that were utterly breathtaking in every way. And she knew what those stars were. They were her father. Her father looking down on her with pride and love and acceptance always. It wasn't just nature nor winter that would make Skadi feel at home wherever she went now. It was his love crossing the sky to be with her every night. Skadi smiled and gave the stars a wave before she sat down in the snow, soaking in the beautiful moment. I hope you have enjoyed this story and it has brought you a night of peaceful, restful sleep. Please, join me again tomorrow night for another sleep story. Until then, sweet dreams.